certainly can rain in England."
Mr. Raymond Greene paused. Everyone at the table had been listening intently. He glanced around at their rapt faces with satisfaction. He was conscious of the artist's dramatic touch. Once more it had not failed him. He had excited interest. In Philip Romilly's eyes there was something even more than interest. It seemed almost as though he were trying to project his thoughts back and conjure up for himself the very scene which was being described to him. The young man was certainly in a very delicate state of health, Mr. Greene decided. "You're keeping us in suspense, sir," the elderly lady complained, leaning forward in her place. "Please go on. What happened when they came out?"
"That," Mr. Raymond Greene said impressively, "is the point of the story. The train remained standing there, as I have said, for several minutes. As many minutes, in fact, as it would have taken them seconds to have traversed that tunnel. Notwithstanding that, they neither of them appeared again. I sat there, believe me, with my eyes fastened upon that path, and when the train started I leaned out the window until we had rounded the curve and we were out of sight, but I never saw either of those two men again. Now there's the beginning of a film story for you. What do you want more than that? There's a dramatic interest, surprise, an original situation." "After all, I suppose the explanation was quite a simple one," Mr. Busby remarked. "They were probably acquaintances, and they stayed to have a chat." Mr. Raymond Greene shook his head doubtfully. "All I can say to that is that it was a queer place to choose for a little friendly conversation," he pronounced. "They were both tall men, about the same height, I should say, and it would have been impossible for them to have even stood upright."
"You mentioned the fact, did you not," the lady who called herself Miss Pinsent observed, "that it was raining heavily at the time. Perhaps they stayed under the bridge to shelter."
"That's something I never thought of," Mr. Greene admitted. "Perhaps for the reason that they both of them seemed quite indifferent to the rain. The young man in the dark clothes hadn't even an umbrella. I must admit that I allowed my thoughts to travel in another direction. Professional instinct, you see. It was a fairly broad canal, and the water was nearly up to the towing path. I'd lay a wager it was 12 or 15 feet deep. Supposing those two men had met on that narrow path and quarreled. Supposing—" "Don't!" Mr. Raymond Greene stopped short. He gazed in amazement at Elizabeth Dalstan, who had suddenly clutched his hand. There was something in her face which puzzled as well as startled him. She had been looking at her opposite neighbor, but she turned back towards the narrator of this thrilling story as the monosyllable broke from her lips. "Please stop," she begged. "You are too dramatic, Mr. Greene. You really frighten me." "Frighten you?" he repeated. "My dear Miss Dalstan." "I suppose it is very absurd of me," she went on, smiling appealingly at him, "but your words were altogether too graphic. I can't bear to think of what might have taken place underneath that tunnel. You must remember that I saw it too. Don't go on. Don't talk about it any more. I'm going upstairs for my cigarettes. Are you coming to get my chair for me, Mr. Greene, or must I rely upon the deck steward?" Mr. Raymond Greene was a very gallant man, and he did not hesitate for a moment. He sprang to his feet and escorted the young lady from the saloon. He glanced back as he left the table to nod his adieu to the little company whom he had taken under his charge. Philip Romilly was gazing steadfastly out of the porthole. "Kind of delicate young fellow, that," he remarked. "Nice face, too. Can't help thinking that I've met or seen someone like him lately." End of Book 1, Chapter 4.